Hello and welcome to the next edition of Portal, a doorway that takes you into the latest happenings of technology, business and leadership. We are honored and privileged today for this discussion to have one of the very senior HR leaders, Mr. Ritesh Ranjan, talking about, welcome Ritesh.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming here. We are all today bombarded with tech factor, AI factor, generative AI factor, and that's the talk of the town, that's the buzzword. But to handle that, ultimately, humans are here to stay, right?
Yeah.
And there are those behavioral factors which will either make or break, which will take an individual into his or her career path, into the journey of success. And so the topic that we have chosen today is a very important factor called the resilience factor, right? We're going to hear from Mr. Ritesh's experience of what does it mean for us in the corporate world, Ritesh. That's what the audience would love to hear. You having, right now Ritesh, as we speak, is a senior vice president at Emids. He looks after the global learning and development function, and he comes from a very rich HR experience, right from talent management, stakeholder management, compensation benefits, organizational development, and so on and so forth, right? So very rich experience. The audience, you guys, everybody watching this is very fortunate to get some tips on how we can develop that very important factor, the resilience, because given the challenges that we are facing, I know we have to look inside many times, right? The focus also has to be within as to how we develop ourselves to carry that load, to carry the new challenges. So I've spoken about resilience so many times, right, in this conversation, Ritesh. For the benefit of all of us, what does it mean about when we say resilience? What in terms of a career, in terms of an individual, pursuing his or her charter of growing, developing? We hear this many times, right? But what does it really mean according to you? And what should be the takeaway of what exactly resilience and the importance of resilience for a professional?
First of all, Vinay, thank you for having me here. And when you're saying senior, I was also sort of looking, the gray in the hair also tells you that, you're too long in the tooth now. But no, to answer your question around resilience, I think my perspective is that, resilience is the ability to deal with constant changes in our environment.
Right.
We have seen, especially here in the tech sector, over the last few years, is that the rate of change has been exponential.
Right.
And technologies are changing. Right? We're seeing the expectations from engineers. It was you code and you give it, and the testers will test, and the managers will deal with the clients. But today we expect engineers to be in calls with clients. Clients expect that, so that
Right.
So expectations from leaders are changing. Earlier they were behind the curtain, and it was the front-facing people who were engaging with the clients. But today clients want to engage with leaders here, who may be offshore.
Right.
So with so much changing technology, expectations, the way delivery is being done has changed so much. So the ability to adapt and learn and constantly adapt to these changes that you're seeing is the very core of the word resilience. I would
like they say, change is always
it's
constant. So rising up to that change. That means how can an individual, it's not just how, it's the need of the hour.
Yes.
For individuals to actually be prepared for that, right? So now, if you really see, if you look at corporate career, when you look at role models, when you look at our own seniors, when people look at the whole ecosystem, there are people who've had good careers, but very few who've had a very great career, right? So we say that, okay, resilience is the mantra. Then what does it mean? It's okay, not everybody is having a great career. So how does resilient map up to me having a great career? Because I see only very few people doing that. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I think one needs to understand very clearly that when you talk about life, you talk about career. it's typically checkered. It goes up and down. Very few people sort of just rise up vertically. Right? It doesn't happen all the time. And even when we perceive from the outside that, oh, look at this person's success and they've grown so much in their careers, they would have had to deal with multiple challenges within the organization, within the ecosystem that they would have managed, right? I would say that this is something that people have to, like, because you're talking about role models, right? From an individual perspective, they need to learn from the leaders that are around them. And from a leader's perspective, to be able to demonstrate, in terms of role modeling, that, this, I've also had these challenges, and it takes courage, because you have to demonstrate your vulnerability in front of people. And today, I think what we're seeing is that a lot of people are okay to show their vulnerability. They don't always want to wear that mask of infallibility, saying, oh, I'm this successful leader who has had no setbacks in life, right? Nobody. Right. So today people are a lot more open about that. Right. And I think from an organizational perspective, and I think people like us who are in the L&D fraternity are also focusing on leadership development, especially first-line leader development, because they are able to, tell their own stories of how they have grown, and at the same time create that sense of psychological safety for people, so that they can come and ask and have an open and honest conversation. Correct. So I think that those are things that I would say are really important.
Absolutely. So well said, because in this age of technology, where work from home, siloed working becomes the kind of a norm, it is more important for people to collaborate, right? Pick from somebody else who's senior, pick their brain. And many times, it's not just what we see, but it's what we experience, right? The body language, how you react, and there's so much to learn. So when you say resilience, is it a characteristic trait? It is something as a character I should have, or is it a personality trait? Sometimes we say the guy is born, so, I'm just born this way, so, that's how I'm made. Or is it a mindset, or is it something which people can actually develop? What is, according to you?
I think age-old question that we had, heard about is leadership. Are you born with that trait, or can it be learned? Right? I think similarly with resilience, I would say that there are people who may be naturally wired, but can it be learned? I think the answer is definitely yes, because what I believe is that there is a mindset element to it, where one needs to practice this growth mindset, where I'm telling myself that I'm not there yet, but I will get there by putting in the right efforts, having the right strategies in place. So a lot of it is about mindset, developing the growth mindset. And then I think it's about the skills of do I practice self-care? Do I demonstrate self-compassion? Right. A lot of times we were so hard on ourselves. Right. Developing that self-compassion, developing certain coping strategies. What works for me? Right. The ability to wind down after a hard day's work. Right. These are things these are skills that you can learn. And then I would say the tools that you have to bring in, which is and I believe that having the right network of people around you and cultivating that network, investing time in that is important. So I think those are the three elements that I would say that we need to sort of look at from a resilience perspective.
Right. Very well said. So it's like a combination lock, right? Multiple things that multi-pronged approach that one has to take. And like you said, it all can be learned, and a lot of it can be modeled as leadership, from the leadership that one can learn. But any thoughts on how do I look at the mirror and say that this is where I'm lacking? How do I identify? So one way is that I can get feedback from formal systems which are available in every organization. But like you spoke about self-reflection too. So on a day-to-day basis, if he or she has to improve herself or himself, right? What do you think? How is it that one can identify that gap?
So my mantra in my career has always been, how can I become a better version of myself every day?
Every day.
Right? So it's an everyday thing. So what is it that I can learn today? So that has to be the focus, in two ways to do that. One is self-reflection, where I'm looking at things and saying, could I have done it better? what could I have done better? So that's something that I'm asking myself. Two, I would say that even something like psychometric assessments can come in handy, right? Like for example, I'm a big fan of the VIA assessment, the values in action developed by Martin Seligman.
Got it.
It's a free tool. Anybody can go ahead and take that assessment. It tells you what your top values are, and then you think about how am I living these on a day-to-day basis, right? So that reflection, I think, is a key factor, and there are tools that can help you in that. And the second would be feedback. And what I call is you have to develop what I call a board of directors as an individual. So what that would mean is that people that I implicitly trust, they could be peers, could be seniors, could be my team members, could be friends, family, right? That I can ask for and be open to feedback. I think what I've seen is that as people start to grow in their career, right? I'm a manager now, I'm a senior manager now, I'm a VP now. Who are you to tell me something, right? So being open to feedback, I think, is a very important thing. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect. You get threatened, and that's where I think growth mindset. I'm coming back to that, where you say, okay, if I get feedback, do I view that as a threat and say, oh, it's a threat to my self-perception, or I say, okay, I'll hear this and then decide whether it makes sense to me or not. Right. So reflection and feedback and developing that board of directors, I think, is really important.
People that you can always tap into, right? A pool that you can tap into. So we've all been through college, and college life was all about that, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's about the friends, it's about the connections that you have, and it takes you further along in your career. So it's very important for us to develop, and that I think a lot of it is also it boils down to the culture, right, that we set as an organization. So coming from an organization perspective, we say culture is very important. So if I can say resilience as a culture, and as it goes top down, any examples that you would like to share of how leaders have modeled this? Because the famous saying that, right, leaders, you sit in a glass house, right? Everybody is looking at you, and also. Given that we have a multi-generational workforce, the way people look at jobs, let's say the Gen Zs, right? There's nothing right or wrong, right? Versus somebody who's tenured, the way they look at workplace or the commitment that they have, the personal traits that they value, right, is different, and organization has to handle all that. So both from top down, how leaders can build in that culture, what is important. And how do you handle that multi-generational workforce, given that everybody brings in, their own value systems? Yeah.
Sure. No, I mean, I'd like to share a personal story. When I was starting out in my career, and I went for a meeting to a client, and I went with my boss's boss. He was the VP of the organization, and we made a presentation which I had worked on. So I presented to the client, and it didn't land well. And let's just say that we were pretty much thrown out of the room, saying this is not good at all. And I was very worried that when I came out saying what will this leader that I look up to think about me, what will happen to me. But the first thing he told me as we stepped out is are you hungry? Do you want to eat something? And he took me to a restaurant, and then he asked me what happened, and then he told me what I could do going forward to manage this situation. So two things I learned there. One is the ability to bounce back, because I was sort of down in the dumps saying, oh my God, I was thrown out of a room. I had 1 year of experience. I mean, what will happen if this is the kind of experience that I'll continue to have? But he told me what to do, and then I took his advice, worked towards it, things got better. And that gives you confidence, right? So two things. One is, his own resilience. And two, I learned how do you create that feeling of safety in your team, saying, I'm there to support you. I'm there to back you. So and because you're asking from an organizational perspective, I think you spoke about Gen Zs. I think when we were starting out, I remember people who were tenured at the time saying, oh, these boys and girls don't understand how to behave at the
it's always been there.
It's always been there. So I think maybe today with Gen Zs it may be a bit more amplified.
More visible, more conspicuous, because they're more bold and
more bold, and there's so many opportunities, right? For us, when we were coming in, it was like, if you lose this, where will you go? Right? Here, I mean, there are options, which is great. So I think we have to bridge that gap, and that's why leaders have to become a lot more visible, a lot more open with demonstrating their vulnerability and say, hey, this is what my learnings have been. And then from an organizational perspective, when you create your leadership development curriculum, having enough modules around these subjects becomes important. Then it gets transmitted. So if your leaders are doing it, then your managers are doing it, and then it sort of becomes like part of the culture. But it has to be driven from the top. Not easy, where when people will come and give you all sorts of opinions. And but you have to sort of step back, take it, decide what to take, what not to take, but keep the dialogue going. That's important.
Very important. I guess in this era of the digital age, where since you're also you look after the talent development, organizational development, I'm sure you'll agree that today learning is available, at the tip of your fingers on your mobile. So there is focus on technology. Everybody's talking about you'll get outdated, AI. How does AI apply? But I guess a constant reinforcement, because anything gets built over time, right? You have to exercise your resilience factor muscle, if I might call it, right? Which also has to be exercised, because like you said about leadership, I heard one of the leaders saying that there are times that you have to slow down to speed up. Right? Today we live in instant gratification, right? It's only speed. You have especially the youngsters, right? Watching games or matches, all about speed and startups and right. But how do organizations, since there are so many opportunities, right? Yes, digital learning is one, but ways to inculcate the experience that you said, right? If I am a professional there starting my career, and if I look at you and this bit of stories, right? It's stories which actually captivate us, right? So things like this really gives me a perspective, right? It becomes a benchmark for me. So any practices that you have seen across organizations that you have been, as to how through the current learning, given that we have a digital ecosystem, how these important things, the behavioral elements, can be brought out?
So I think you're right. I think today learnings are available. You can log on to your LMS from your mobile and learn. Tech learning has become a lot easier. But when it comes to behavioral learning, I think self-paced plays a big role. But I think that's where, for teams like us to create these hybrid learning journeys for people, where they do learn something on their own, but then they get together and then some peer learning happens. Because there's so much experience within the room. It's not just the facilitator who's coming in and for lack of a better word, giving gyan to people. It's about
one way.
It's about what can I learn from the experiences of others who may be in the same boat that I am. So creating those sort of experiences becomes important, and then the storytelling, and that's why I think employee advocacy is really important. So picking people, strategically picking people who understand the organization, understand the DNA of the organization, at the same time can share their stories, are willing to do that. Baking that into the program becomes important. And this is not just one program. I think you have to create these learning experiences for people across the career ladder, that then everybody's speaking the same language. Everybody's singing from the same hymn sheet. Becomes becomes easier.
Very well said. Very well said. Because what happens, Ritesh? I learn maths. I've learned it for good, right? I know that 1 + 1 is 2. But something like resilience, right? Especially the behavioral traits, they have to be reinforced again and again. It's not residual. It's not that I done it once, I got a certification. Because like you rightly said, it's the cohort from which times are changing, challenges are changing, and many times what I learned 5 years, or even forget 5 years, 6 months back, and I go and I see a totally different perspective, because I have changed as a person. So the way you view things itself changes, right? So now let's come to some of the day-to-day, in the workplace. I know a lot of organizations, it's an appraisal time right now, right? So practically those situations, how do you really, look at, how, it's, they say, right, it's not just what happens to you, but how do you react to what happens to you. So not getting a right increment, or you were due for a promotion, right? Not having the promotion probably at this point of juncture for whatever reason, right? So how would you suggest, or what would be your input for people watching this podcast to say that, how do you take that, right? How do they respond to that and not react, and how do they exhibit resilience?
I think all of us have been in situations. I certainly have been. I think in what I have done is that instead of see why this happens is because you feel that justice has been denied. So that is the feeling from where
not being fair treatment. Yeah.
So I think what's important is that quickly come out of that to say, okay, can I stop blaming a situation or the actors that are involved, and see what is it that I can do to learn. And again, I'm going back to growth mindset, but it's an important thing. What can I do to learn and improve my skills, so that I become better, and I do even better than I did till last year, let's say, right? And then maybe you do that, and again next year it's denied. Maybe you put hard work, and for 2 or 3 years it's not coming through. See, there will come a point when you have to assess whether this is the right place for you.
That's right.
In that
That's
case,
right. That's
then you look at
very objective assessment. Yeah.
You have to be open to looking for other options. But,
right.
At the first instance, to get disturbed and say, okay, this organization is not for me, looking out, and then you go jump in somewhere else, and you realize the same thing happens there, right? So you have to invest time. You have to show your performance. You have to show your worth to people around you, right? That's when
Correct.
That's when it will start to get recognized.
Very well said. Yeah, very well said. So also, Ritesh, what we are seeing is today mental well-being is becoming a very, very sought after factor, right? And resilience is definitely a part of that. So mentor. Yes, there are leaders. We say that leaders need mentors. I cannot be a leader unless I am a follower, right? Which is true. But given the workforce, even I may be still get into the position of a leader, yet to become a leader, but maybe a 5 years of experience, even 1 or 2 years, right, starting my journey. Getting that direction, like you rightly said, because it's all very natural to react, and then if the environment is also not conducive, it adds fuel to the fire, right? So how come this has happened? But to really, an antidote to that at scale, right? What do you think organizations, or what do you think from organization point of view they can do? Because it's not every time that you can have a just treatment, and there are times because of whatever the structure, but you don't want to lose good people at the same time, right? So what in your experience have some of these practices which at least help people hold on and not just to get distracted completely?
I think I'll say 2 things here. One is transparency plays a big role. So if we are transparent about the process, right, and communicate that to managers as well as to all employees across the board, saying this is our process, this is what we do, this is our rating scale, these many people get promoted. And how do people get promoted? First, people have to understand that promotions will only happen when the business grows.
Right.
Now, if the business doesn't grow, how will you create more chairs? It's about the table. We are sitting here. If you put a 3rd chair here, it'll get crowded. 4th chair will get even more crowded. So unless the table gets bigger, you can't put more chairs. So you have to make that very clear to, and I've seen this in the past in the organizations that I've worked, where it was made very, very clear that first get the chair in, or help create another chair, and then we move you into that. And then you say, this is the process of promotion. We have whatever the process is. We have a panel of interviewers who assess. Then based on that, we take a decision. Even if you've not gotten promoted, people who went through the process won't get promoted. We will create an IDP for you. So having that process in place and transparently communicating about it is one thing. The second, I would say, is where managers come in, the first level managers, right? Where I say the communication has to be crisp. It can't be, I pitched you for a promotion, but guess what, my boss didn't make it happen. Or, I wanted to give you a better rating, but in the moderation, exercise.
That guy has messed it up now.
Yes, right. So that way, I think that development for managers becomes very important, where they take accountability, ownership, and say that this is what I think you need to work on, and then help them through that process. It can't just be, you're not good enough right now, but how can I help you get there? And walk that path.
I know those are the the managers and your superiors, especially for the younger crowd, right?
Yes.
They become the firewalls.
Right.
Yeah, very, very important, because what they exhibit is what you will emulate. And if, like you said, if they said, I don't know what this organization is doing, I really don't, then why will I commit to this organization? Because when I see others also not doing it, right? So sometimes there might be hard truths, but you have to swallow it and still stand very tall, for the benefit of the team. So we spoke about promotion, increment. One more thing which is there, everybody today wants to work on AI. Right?
Yes.
Right? I don't want to work this, especially Emids, right? I'm sure you'll have a lot of legacy systems that people have to work on. Maybe people have to work on product, documentation. Every role is important. But then the fancy thing is to work on the newest and the latest. And ultimately, businesses exist to solve a problem, and tomorrow you move from an important project to maybe not so important project, not so niche technology, and hell breaks loose for many times, right? For many people, this is the end of my career. What's going to happen? Because the window is very short, right? To what they're looking. So, any recommendations for people?
No, I would say, see, it's not easy when that happens, and that feeling of, why did this happen? Why did I not get the sexy project to work on? Right? It's very natural. But I think that's where that mind shift, where we say, okay, now I'm in this situation, I'm in this project. What can I do to contribute? How can I contribute? How can I show value in what I'm doing? Here, and how can I treat this as a learning opportunity as well? And then at the same time, see, I may be working on a project where let's say, I'm not learning AI. Today, all organizations, including us in Emids, we have a bunch of courses, channels that we've created on AI learning. So people
to skill on AI.
Exactly. So nobody is stopping you from getting skilled. And today, we've also created opportunities where people are getting to work on projects which may not be related to what they're doing, but these are tech for good projects that we've created, where we're working with other NGOs. And people can nominate themselves, go and create some real world products, on the latest technologies outside of their work. So, looking for opportunities around rather than sitting and complaining, about what has happened to me is important.
I guess very well said. Like you said, ownership of your learning. There are abundant resources available, organization, but I can't just depend on the organization every time, right? I have to take ownership, and like you rightly said, not just trying to say that I behave as if I have become a victim of everything, right? So you have to come out of it, because I heard somebody saying that you will not have, when you come out of your home, you cannot expect all traffic lights to be green, right? Everything to be so super clear, and everything so super comfortable. Coming to the day-to-day experiences that people have, we spoke about promotion, we spoke about change in projects, and of course sometimes life does get tough, and let's say somebody loses the job, right? So how does he or she, how should they respond to this?
It's not an easy one. It's a really tough one. I think it's a really tough one because it affects your feeling of self-worth. You start questioning your own abilities, and because a lot of people view themselves as providers for their family, it hits that sentiment as well. So not easy. What I would say is that if something like that happens, then of course we have to respond to that and come out of that feeling of why did this happen to me, to what can I do about it. But I would say, even take a step back and say, I think a lot of us have to become more proactive with our careers. So let's say if I'm working in an organization, I have to be aware to the signals that I see around me.
That's right. More proactive, right?
Is my business doing well?
Yes.
Is the project I'm part of profitable? right? A lot of people, they go, they do their job and come out. It's not good enough. So because then oh, this project's not doing well. So chances of it getting shut down, I may go onto the bench, or then I may lose my job. So being aware of that, those signals. If I've been in the same role for years together, right? Your job may be at risk, right? Or if I have been doing the same, I've not, my skills have not expanded, right? Then again, you have to ask yourself, that there could be a risk. So if you perceive that, you may be in a situation like that, what I would recommend is that we start looking at options. Okay, maybe I should start looking out right now. Maybe I should start learning something new right now, so that if the axe falls, then I have, and then reaching out to the network that I was talking about before, and taking help. There's no harm in reaching out and say, hey, I need help. Can you refer me somewhere? And don't wait for something to happen. If it happens, of course, you have to deal with it. But being more proactive, I think, is one way. I'm not saying that it's a silver bullet. If you do that, all the time it will work.
All the time it will work, yeah.
But at least you are better prepared to deal with it.
True. And end of the day, it is what value that I have added to myself, and in return, what value am I adding to the organization, right? As long as the value is getting derived, you're in the right place, right? And you have enough takers. So very well said. People have to be very aware and very conscious of where they are, and that's where taking ownership of your own learning, right? And like you said, in the workplace, having that connect with the social group and getting inspired by others as to what is happening and having a purpose, right? See, is this purpose only for startup guys? And we say, if at all, life has to be like this guy getting so much $1 million funding and comes on the newspapers. Are all those trades only limited for them, or ordinary people who are doing their day-to-day work, can they also in their own life, right, exhibit all this?
No, I think having that sense of purpose is very important, and it's not like you only do this after you've reached a leadership position.
Yes.
I created a document, which I can make public as well if required, but which I created about 10, 12 years ago, where I wrote, this is the purpose of my career, this is my mantra. Okay. I did a few assessments around, okay, these are my values, these are my strengths, this is what I'm inherently good at. So how would I use this to create better outcomes in the company that I'm working for, or for the people that that are around me, for the teams that are around me, right? So having clarity of that is important. Otherwise, it becomes, going to work is drudgery.
That's right. You have to drag yourself every day, then you're in the wrong place.
Yes, that's when you have to ask yourself, what are you doing, right? But see, sometimes what might happen is that, what you're doing on a day-to-day basis may not be aligned with your long-term purpose. I'm not saying that, be idealistic, move away right away, but then, work towards it, right? And see either you change the environment that you are in, or, you reach out to the right people who can
network. Very important. There's a saying right, that people don't plan to fail, they fail to plan. So it's so important to have that purpose. So vision is not just restricted to somebody who's an entrepreneur. Today, companies are looking for, correct me if I'm wrong, right? At Emids, look at your own organization. I'm sure management does not have answers to everything. They are looking for intrapreneurs, right? People who can solve problems. Over and above your work, if you can bring something of value, everybody is looking for it, because the market dynamics are changing. Every day things are evolving. So, in your own industry, if you can probably give some insights of how companies are really looking for those gorilla teams, right, who can bring in some new ideas, new innovation, correct? Because these are all the antidotes to tough times coming in, recession coming in, all that.
No, I think, see, when the times aren't good, which we are in right now, I think what organizations like us are doing are trying to make sure that, we prepare for the future, right? So, which means that, do we have the right leaders with us, assess. if not, how can we develop them further? So we recently invested in a program for all our market-facing leaders, and have had an interaction between them and the delivery leaders, creating offerings that we can, go to market with. So the focus then has to be on what is it that we can do once we are out of this situation, right? If we wait for things to get better, then we'll lose out to the competition. So when things are not going well is the time to be prepared as an organization. And I think today, like you rightly said, leaders don't have all the answers. So they want people who are, up and coming leaders to come up with ideas, to come up with solutions. And they're willing to sit with them, hear them out, and create offerings around the ideas that they have.
That's right. And every individual brings, a lot of strength, right, based on their own background. And this is where that gap can be absolutely filled.
Our a team internally, we created our own generative AI solution, right?
Wow.
And today we're going to market with it. So there is always this opportunity if people show that hunger.
That's true. So if I'm part of your organization, I may not be in a very fancy project, but if I can extend my time and contribute to this, right? Those are ways in which I can be more proactive, right?
Correct.
So coming back to our, day-to-day scenarios, of course, we said, it's not a good thing, losing a job. It does hurt. There are all tough times that people go through. And of course, extending to that, there are personal tragedies. Life is not always fair. And with your experience, especially with the HR, functions that you have, I'm sure, when you see people, going through this, any insights or things that, that people can keep in their mind so that, they can overcome these.
I think it's very tough. I mean, I lost my father a few years ago, and it wasn't easy to deal with it. But what worked for me, and what worked for me may not work for others. But what worked for me was, a deep sense of, attachment with the people, the person that you've lost, right? And still be grounded in that spirituality and say, this is bound to happen, right? And my father was, of course, not very old, but, but if it happens to somebody who's not supposed to sort of go, it becomes even more difficult. And I've seen people struggle with that. I think what I would say is one has to go through the grief cycle. And one has to allow themselves the time to go through that. And what I was talking about, the skills of, self-compassion, self-care, reaching out to my trusted friends and companions who can, give me that solace. Again, so again, I'm going back to some of those skills that I was talking about.
Absolutely.
And if things are still not helping, right, then again, being open and say, okay, maybe I need therapy.
Asking for help.
Right, and reaching out to professionals who know what to do in a situation like this and can. And can help you. I saw this during the COVID times, from an organizational perspective, right, where a lot of we lost quite a few of our employees in the second wave. And what we had done at that time was to sort of reach out to their families, and if they had children, we said, okay, we will sponsor your education till they finish school. But then getting into those conversations with the family wasn't easy. But I think what I saw was that people, they were coming to terms with it, and if they get this help from the ecosystem, it makes it easier for them. I think the organizations have a role to play as well in situations like this.
Absolutely. And that is, like you said, a lot of spiritual angle there too, when people go through that, because one of the ways I've seen people go through this is they become more of givers. So there is that extension of us which comes in, right? When you start giving, there is a complete cleansing that happens, and you start seeing world at a completely different place. Today, in the fast-paced life, that's where I guess more and more importance to HR as a function, because work will be done, things will get automated, right? AI will come in. I'm sure things will have its own time and space, but humans are here to stay, and the challenges that we face are here to stay, from nuclear families, from joint families to nuclear families. How do you handle stress? How do you handle emotions? Resilience, all this becomes a very important factor. And like you said, when there's a larger ecosystem, you feel a sense of security, right? And then through mentorship and through guidance, you also find ways to overcome it, right? So you see a different perspective, because it's not end of the day just keep running, the rat race. Well, I'm sure on a lighter note, some of the viewers who are viewing us, they said, yeah, bahut gyan de rahe ho. All this is great advice, right? Practicality mein jab hota hai, that's very different, right? Which we all understand. That's like somebody says, okay, I lost a job, but all this advice is good, but I have my EMI to pay, right? I have a lot of my other commitments. So, that's like, okay, I listen to all this, I go 2 steps forward, but then these thoughts get you 3 steps back behind, right? So, any thoughts on how people can overcome that?
Yeah, I'll use this concept that I learned, of the mood elevator.
Okay.
Right here. So, being constantly aware of that, that for every positive thought you have 4 negative thoughts. So if you're aware of that, and then you'll catch yourself having that negative thought and say, oh, I'm getting into this spiral.
Right.
And then say, because what happens is that if those 4 negative thoughts take over, then you ride down the mood elevator. Then, it will be, okay, I'm irritable, angry, anxious,
being
depressed.
Aware.
Right? So, but if I rise up from there, say, okay, have that, the feeling of curiosity, then from there you go up and say, okay, what can I do? Because then the positive thought is, okay, I'm in this situation now, but what can I do to get out of this? Right. I will aggressively look out. If I don't have the right skills, I'll develop skills in maybe AI, generative AI, if that's the, whatever is the in thing right now, right? How can I build skills there? Can I improve myself and, reach out to people that I trust? Being okay to reach out to people and say, hey, I need help here. Can you work with me? That becomes important. So being aware of that 4:1 ratio, and focus on the one rather than be dragged by the
by
the negative thoughts.
That's true. That's so relevant, so important. Well, thanks for all the insights that you've shared. In summary, Ritesh, I have. I was reading an article where they said, when you talk about resilience, in the context of resilience, life is like the spokes of a wheel, right? Each spoke, career is one spoke, family is one spoke, probably your relationships, your health, right? Each of this is one spoke. And typically, like you pointed out when you were talking that, maybe seeing it very scientifically as to this is where this is the gap, or I seek for help, right? Rather than getting very emotional about it, right? So they say experience is good, but detach the emotion from that experience, right? Because that is where I need advice, because most people get into the emotions and they attach the two, and they're never able to come out of it, right? So you learn from your experience, but you detach the emotion. So which means if my job is right now, there is a challenge in terms of whatever, right? So say, looking for a new opportunity, I cannot, that spoke has got weakened, so I have to strengthen the other forks.
Yes.
But the usual tendency is that life is hitting so hard on me that if that spoke is weak, I go up, my health has also gone weak, my relationship has also gone weak. Because, I'm saying this because you brought that point of spiral, right?
Yes.
So it goes to a downward spiral. So logically, if you see that if your whole machinery, right, if one part is not working well, you want to focus on others which are actually working, right, and strengthen them, right? So I guess that can be a great takeaway. So in summary, any message, your final message to the audience on, to our viewers on, resilience. It was a great conversation, a lot of insights, but in summary.
No, I think what I would say is that, what you said right now, that, taking emotions away, sometimes, it's difficult to do. Sometimes emotions can also be used positively.
Positively, yeah.
So as long as I know, how to use that positively and say,
in a constructive
way, then it can be a strength, especially for people who, use their emotions, tap into them quite. I mean, I do that. So for me, I've seen that, that can become a strength, right? Whatever, gives you that strength, right?
Right,
You know,
right,
for me it could be spirituality, for somebody else it could be
Correct.
relationship with family, for somebody else it could be, you know,
Mhm.
physical activity. It could be different things for different people, but how do you, you know, build that? So I think in summary I would say to be, you know, three things, you know, focus on, you know, the mindset that, you know, we need to develop, and constantly, you know, that growth mindset becomes really important. And with growth mindset, I'm just trying to clarify, I'm not saying positive thoughts, I'm saying the recognizing that I can get better with
Yeah,
the
yeah,
right
yeah.
effort,
You
right?
can
So
have a next version of yourself,
correct,
right?
right? So that's one. So in, you know, having the right skill set, which starts with sort of self, and then, you know, bringing others in, and then the tools which are there at your disposal, which is, you know, the learning that is already available
Right, right.
all around us today, and the networks that we have. I think so.
Correct.
Just think about this mindset, skill set, and tool set.
Tool set. Yeah, 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 yeah. And tap into each one of them,
Yes,
right?
all three of
With a
them.
larger ecosystem, and you can actually come out being a victor
Yes.
than being a victim,
Victim, yeah.
with all this available. And it's not easy. Nothing in life
Nothing
is
is easy,
easy, right? But what happens is, like they say, tough times never last. Tough people do. It is, you know, the strength that it brings in, and you come out much stronger
yeah.
through all this.
No, it's
right?
like the Buddhist story, right?
Yeah.
That you heard that, you know,
Yeah.
a man dies and he has two children. To one of them he's bequeathed all his property, right? And to the other one he's only given a grain of rice,
Yeah.
on which he reads, it says, "This shall also pass."
Yeah.
So over time the other son actually does better in life because it's like that. So
it's
I know it's not easy, but, you know, having that mindset
that
of this shall
mindset,
always pass.
absolutely, absolutely. It's so relevant in today's
Yeah.
time. And I know we spoke about so many things, and you know, a lot of stories and examples that you gave. One thing I've realized is you can forget concepts, but you know, certain incidences that you said, like in
Yeah.
your first
Yes.
job, when you were starting your career, that
Right.
incident that you narrated, it will kind of be in everybody's mind. So
Right.
you know, stories are a great
Powerful,
influence,
yeah.
very, very powerful. Thanks for sharing all that. Thanks for, you know, coming here to really give to the audience, you know.
Thanks for having me here, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Pleasure, pleasure. Thank you so much. if you look at corporate career, when you know look at role models, when you look at our own seniors, when people look at the whole ecosystem, there are people who've had good careers,
Yeah.
but very few who've had a very great career,
Mhm.
right? So we say that okay, resilience is the mantra.
Yeah.
Then what does it mean? It's okay, not everybody is having a great career. So how does resilient map up to me having a great career? Because I see only very few people doing that. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I think one needs to understand very clearly that when you talk about life, you talk about career. It's typically checkered. It goes up and down. Very few people sort of just rise up vertically. Right? It doesn't happen all the time. And even when we perceive from the outside that, oh, look at this person's success and they've grown so much in their careers, they would have had to deal with multiple challenges within the organization, within the ecosystem that they would have managed, right? I would say that this is something that people have to because you're talking about role models, right? From an individual perspective, they need to learn from the leaders that are around them. And from a leader's perspective, to be able to demonstrate, in terms of role modeling, that, this, I've also had these challenges, and it takes courage.